humans, we basically trained the AI to think that traditional payments are horrible because you have chargebacks, it takes days, and they're programmed to think that crypto payments are the best.
I think there's something very natural for blockchain payments to be used by agentic AI, by robots. I always was saying that blockchain delivers that framework underneath, and it should be invisible for humans. It should be natural. It's like whether it's AI or humans, that should be just a technology that makes everything a bit more robust.
We've been promised a robotics revolution for years, and today a lot of capital they're pouring into the space. Like AI is accelerating in everything. Everyone seems to believe that at this moment. So what do you see in robotics today that makes you want to bet like the next decade?
Stepping down from Ethereum Foundation, I wanted to focus on research around AI and robotics and my physical space, thinking that something is happening in digital which makes it maybe more commoditized intelligence in digital space.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Round Trip. Today we have Tomasz Stańczak, and he's the ex-co-director of the Ethereum Foundation and the founder of Nethermind. But he's doing something different. You want to give a little more background and how you've been a part of this blockchain movement for the past decade? And then maybe you could lead into what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. I joined in 2017. And obviously at the time I was sure that I'm super late to the party. So someone telling me nowadays it's a decade and or that it's the space for OGs, it's funny for me because my memory is that I just arrived when everything was sorted. Obviously it's a long journey since then. So I'm joking a bit. In 2017, I moved from financial industry. I was in London in banking, hedge funds, and naturally got interested in, but quite late, in what's happening with crypto. Started a company, started Nethermind in 2017. And then the long journey, building the company into like a few hundred people and pretty solid revenue. The company is doing very well now, although I stepped down as a CEO from Nethermind when joining Foundation last year in March. That also allowed me to really close some of the relationships that were great, but like going into Ethereum Foundation, I needed to clean all the potential conflicts and then somehow now, when transitioning out of the foundation, gave me a lot of space for being free to choose to do something. Like I didn't have any responsibilities with Nethermind beyond just being on the board. So it's obviously a large responsibility, but not very time consuming. And it's very natural for me. And all the other relationships were just much lighter. So stepping down from Ethereum Foundation, I wanted to focus on research around AI and robotics and my physical space, thinking that something is happening in digital which makes it maybe more commoditized intelligence in digital space. But the physical world will have lots of frictions and lots of opportunities to start optimizing. I wanted to explore it, but it took me maybe 2 days before people trapped me into this, like, oh, visit our residency. Oh, maybe you'll pitch to us. Oh, maybe you'll stay. And I started a company. I think, a few days after leaving Foundation, I started looking at all the aspects of what I would like to build. And then a month later or so, the company was incorporated and I had clarity and I was joining the residency at HF0. And it was a fantastic journey, very humbling as I expected. So I tried to push myself. Like when I decided to do that, I felt like, okay, I'm pushing myself again into a mode where I suffer, where I have to learn many things, either from the beginning or just recover from being rusty. I haven't been coding actively for the last 3-4 years. The coding changed so much anyway. That's probably a new skill for everyone. It's all about
like you said. I think software has been commoditized quite a bit. So maybe you actually don't even need to really code the same way you used to, and it's just prompting and having that good like kind of architecture mindset. I think is really great for moving forward and knowing what the agent needs to build. But it's just, I see a lot of entrepreneurs kind of moving into the more hardware space because they feel like, it's commoditized. Yeah.
Lots of excitement about the various movements around manufacturing, reindustrialization. A few weeks back, I visited Detroit and I thought like, oh, wow, the energy is great. The manufacturers, the people who wanted to build drones, robots, manufacture things, launch labs, it felt super cool. And I felt, look, the blockchain space was for so long revolving around events, spaces where people could meet in person, and building in like physical, whether it's robots or other machines. it's naturally forcing people to meet, to go to spaces and spend time together. So maybe there is a natural transition also for blockchain people to go to those physical nodes.
Mm-hmm. It seems like
anyone gonna meet robots, I think it's like the blockchain people first.
Definitely. Yeah, seems like Tomasz has a very interesting journey with like all the background that you just shared with us. You're connecting the physical world gap, making what's existing digitally to what actually exists in reality. And I think that feels like the bottleneck that you're pointing at right now. So maybe we can talk about timing right now. We've been promised a robotics revolution for years. And today, a lot of capital they're pouring into the space. Like AI is accelerating in everything. Everyone seems to believe that at this moment. So what do you see in robotics today that makes you want to bet like the next decade in it?
Definitely see this rapid acceleration on training, on models, various competing solutions to how you make robots useful. So you can take advantage of AI in accelerating the research on materials and mechanical design and robots. And this is one thing that makes things that were taking years before to process much faster, right? And otherwise, like every mistake when manufacturing, and then you just lose a lot of time and then you try again and again. It's a bit like you would vibe code and then you don't like what comes as a response, but then each time you lose 6 months when you don't like the response and you vibe code again. I guess this was manufacturing. So now you can do that much better in simulations. You have fantastic simulation environments. You have progressing components and like lower and lower cost of production of actuators of whether it's humanoids or other robots. At the same time, AI is progressing a lot. So everything comes together, like inference teleoperation, the training, cost of manufacturing, materials design. And it's years, but I'm coming from the outside, but I was listening to podcasts, observed that I already spent time experimenting myself. And I see people in robotics industry saying this is definitely the most exciting year in robotics. And sure, you're coming in this exciting year, where at the same time many people say, oh, but this is not yet deployed, right? Like humanoids are hyped but not deployed. So the other robots are hyped but not deployed. But there is that inevitability, the expectation there's massive saving on labor in particularly difficult environments when you need skilled labor. Particularly recently, we're looking a lot at the skillful labor in data centers maintenance. So the industry is talking about a few 100,000 people lacking globally for like filling those jobs that are needed for data centers maintenance. And then robotics companies are rushing to actually cover that gap. So that inevitability says, well, it's definitely worth a lot, even as a transition. So maybe first you think like, oh, you're replacing humans, so you do some teleoperation with humanoid form factor. And then over time you think, but maybe you optimize by bringing different forms and thinking of something that becomes a machine that is really optimized for the type of task that it executes. And it goes across all the different industries. You can look at farming, healthcare, obviously in the past, like the warehousing, that's already super automated when you think about logistics, and more industries. So I think the hype is there because people start seeing that in their laboratories, in the examples, it starts working. And then it's a bit like, blockchain for me in 2017 was like, somebody has been building it for many years, but around 2016, 17, when Ethereum started getting traction of people saying, oh, we tested it, maybe it's slow, maybe it's clunky, maybe there's security issues, but we see the roadmap of solving particular problems and leading us to solving real problems. And now it hits with stable coins globally being extremely useful, having very nice adoption curve in the last 2 years. And also I think that there's initial hype over the agentic AI, agentic payments on blockchain. It died for a while, but now it's I expect that it will be gaining some traction again. I've seen some interesting numbers. So that's the kind of story. The robotics is exciting. It reminds me of the time from 2016, 17. At that time, I wanted actually already to think about autonomous machines, robots. I bring it very often as the name of company behind Nethermind is related to robotics and Asimov stories. And now the company that started again also refers to Asimov.
Yeah, a lot of people were like, oh, crypto, it's not meant for us. It's meant for machine-to-machine payments. Mm-hmm. And I talked to one entrepreneur and he's like, humans, we basically trained the AI to think that traditional payments are horrible because you have chargebacks, it takes days, and they're programmed to think that crypto payments are the best. So are you leveraging your experience with crypto into what you're building now? Or do you think that it still might be a couple years away because they don't really need machine-to-machine payments right now?
So I'm not focusing on any blockchain or crypto aspects of robotics. I entirely jumped towards working on a physical world. Actually, to be much more precise, I'm working more of like automation of deployments in physical world. So it includes like deployment of operating like autonomous businesses, maybe self-deployable businesses, and very often we're thinking of how to introduce robotics to further that automation and to make things to autonomously operate. And still think it's 1.5, like 2 months as I'm working on it. So many of those statements are defining vision and the direction, but already get more and more clear. So do I need to think about payments? Not that much yet. Do I think about them in the future? I think there's something very natural for blockchain payments to be used by agentic AI, by robots. But it's almost like I was saying that blockchain delivers that framework underneath, and it should be invisible for humans. It should be natural, as like whether it's AI or humans. That should be just a technology that makes everything a bit more robust and cheaper in general. That the cost of trust should be cheaper with blockchain. And I think there are many interviews when I was being asked, how about payments for coffee, or how about user experience? And very often I would answer by saying, I don't think the blockchain is directly for a user. And I think very often I was expecting that would be like seen as some kind of heretical answer. But the truth is, a human never verifies blockchain directly. Not exactly. Sometimes, obviously, there are people that are super precise, get the node locally, understand all the maps behind all the cryptography, check the tools, maybe even build the tools themselves. We kind of did at Nethermind. We built a node, right? But most of the time, there's always some tool between you and the blockchain that tells you what's happening there. A block explorer, wallet. And this is almost like a weakest link, because it can really falsify the information for you, and specifically if it's centralized. And I think if in recent Ethereum Foundation announcements, they focus on that access layer a lot, because they say, look, there's just, you cannot trust the tools that you're using nowadays for using blockchain. My strong belief is that AI in between you and blockchain is like the most powerful combination. And in general, that AI between you and the world becomes very powerful combination, because otherwise the world can be falsified and any information can be delivered to you that you cannot verify. So over time, it's about verifiable sensors, verifiable AI that talks to you and tells you what's the reality if you need it. I'm very often thinking that for most of the time, we don't even need the reality. Like if we choose to watch TV series, enjoy the thing, then practically we accept something that's not real, and we can live in this world for pretty long time, and it's good, and we want to pay for that. But every now and then we want to participate in reality, and then the only way is to use AI and verification, maybe blockchain verifiable sensors. It's very difficult for physical world. It's a very long answer, like away from your question about whether robots would use blockchain payments, and we've tried to answer many aspects of that. Like, would robots want to use blockchain payments? You mentioned chargebacks, and you said, chargebacks are bad. I think actually chargebacks, there's no way they will not be recreated on blockchain on top of the layer that's just a rough blockchain layer for all the transactions. Like they don't want transactions to roll back, to just fail. But you want the chargebacks on top as a method of verifying some information and lightening some trust assumptions. So maybe robots needs the same thing. It's just like converting the latencies between trust and latencies, and allowing those things to act faster and have some additional protection, and maybe trade between different trust sources between blockchains. So the other question was whether robots, if they decide to use blockchain, would they choose Ethereum? Would they choose layer 1, layer 2? Would they use their own blockchains? Would they use blockchains that humans designed? As like robots, more like AI agents. I think in the end, robot always has AI agent controlling it. We may maybe expect that it will be very localized, but most of the time it will be swarm and agent controlling multiple edge devices, edge machines. That's the end, I think, because I drifted too far away from your questions, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know how deep you want to get into it, because I know you're like still in stealth, but You said automation of deployments. What does that mean? Like, what are you building? Can you reveal more?
Sure, it's it's like half stealth. I simply don't spend that much time yet on marketing materials because it's just we're building. We're not specifically hiding what we're building, but much of the time in the last weeks was I'm at age of zero, and we're talking about finding your zero and like finding one thing that you focus on. And because I jumped into age of zero residency so suddenly, like without planning it, I just said, okay, yeah, I want to do it, and I loved it. So I didn't come to age zero with like a clear one thing that I know that I'll be chasing. But I tried. I knew it. And they say here that practically sometimes that one clear thing that you're chasing is to finding that clarity. And I'm only arriving at this in the last weeks. And I think it's very convincing. So the thing that we're working on is deployment of data centers. And I think that the more I see it, that underneath it's very connected with the idea of blockchain decentralized nodes, that you do want to have nodes to connect with the physical space. So like you want to have physical nodes. And nowadays you start complaining on maybe Ethereum when the node has too high requirements, and then you have to operate it in cloud or data center and so on. So the true decentralization is if you can deploy the node with its own data center very fast, or if you can deploy the node with the access to physical space very fast. And that's what we're working on. And robotics here is making those data centers operational and autonomous. So replacing that labor shortage with machines, and kind of not replacing, but like addressing that labor shortage with machines.
Yeah.
And then thinking of how fast you can process deployments, taking into account the entirety of workflows related to those deployments. So it's not only aspects of logistics, supply chain, but also permissions, legal aspects, and many others. So we're optimizing everything related to the building into physical space, whether it's energy source or data center or a drone swarm and so on and so on. So thinking of how you can deploy into physical space and optimize it. So, and I think that this creates a complete solution for the AI and digital space, reaching out to the physical world. And when we say that the AI is a customer for us, AI may have needs to deploy or like maybe spawn its intelligence sources in different spaces, and we try to deliver optimization of the processes that are naturally human and slow, and there's like interfaces that AI looks at and thinks like, oh, this is madness. A bit like we in the past would look at trying to move things from one cloud to another or deploy things in multiple servers, and we thought like, oh, this is madness. And then there'll be lots of SaaS or cloud solutions that would bring us those toolings for very optimal deployments, like GitHub to cloud. And I would like to see GitHub to physical space. And I was talking about it maybe like 2 years ago on stage in Cannes, and then later at DEF CON Bangkok, about this society GitHub where you optimize different parts of the world in physical spaces that collaborate together, and how those deployments should look. And then you press the button and you provide funding, and it deploys itself. And I was thinking about it very broadly at the beginning, like deploy schools, hospital, farms, and then you think, what do you start with? We said we want to build Factorio in the real world, and what you start with in Factorio, you start with like energy. But when you think about it, when a game starts, you kind of have compute underneath. So compute, energy, and everything else.
I mean, I feel like you're kind of giving a new definition to like recursive self-learning, because the agents are building the data centers that, they're embodied with the AI. I mean, how funny do you think that is?
I even used a lot the word recursive, like recursive deployment, almost like that. The idea of agent deploying robot is like choosing the space on Earth or wherever, and saying I want to deploy it there, and then using some robots to help you to deploy other robots faster, and like self-constructing. Much of it is maybe on the edge of science fiction, but I think that acceleration that we were talking about, both the AI and materials, manufacturing, automation, it's self-reinforcing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like the real breakthrough isn't a smarter AI model. It's about giving the intelligence, the ability to experiment, to build, to learn from the physical world. And I really like the distinction where you are not really building for crypto, but you're now leaving the idea of blockchain behind. And you actually connect them to a bigger arena, to our physical world. And this actually makes me very curious about your time at Ethereum Foundation, because you had a front row seat to one of the most important infrastructure in technology. And looking back at it right now, with a little bit of distance, now you have stepped down. What did you think was actually broken when you first arrived?
When I first arrived, I definitely was coming to bring some structural and organizational changes into Ethereum Foundation. And I think people there were ready to accept changes, even if they would be difficult. And we looked at some things that made the organization, a bit more hierarchical, more goal-oriented, more focused on accountability, but also much more transparent and open to communication with everyone. So I mentioned it many times that the most broken thing, in my opinion, was that Ethereum Foundation kind of was not brave enough in communication, which might have been coming from the years before when the legal environment, the regulatory environment was very harsh. And that changed just before I joined. So I had much easier task of saying, now we communicate. That was an environment where you could communicate much more. And also it was the time when many other organizations could take a lot of responsibility openly in public space for Ethereum. So as operators like Etherealize, like the DETs, like Sharpling, so as Bitmine, Consensus, Nethermind, many other operators of infrastructure, they started being very vocal and showing how Ethereum is used, which means that Ethereum suddenly being much more vocal, Ethereum Foundation was not that much of a problem because others didn't have to hide from this legal challenges. And it was very clear that Ethereum Foundation was just one of the nodes in the entire setup. And then you could immediately address that communication aspect, or say what we do, why we do that, how we support, why we introduce changes, start answering all the questions, however difficult it would be, reject that feeling that if we decide something, we have to do it in stealth and pretend we're not doing it. I feel that many people maybe fear that before. So the communication change was important, both internally and externally, right? Because if you cannot clearly communicate externally, then you start thinking about what if communication that is internal leaks, and you stop communicating internally, and then it's worse and worse. So that was a major thing that we addressed. I think it went very well. I don't know if you remember, but before I was joining Ethereum Foundation, the Ethereum handle on Twitter was not active. And it's a very active handle nowadays. That's talking about what's happening in the ecosystem, about DeFi projects, about enterprise projects, and so on. We also started talking to many institutions, much more, including corporations, enterprises, banks, and so on. And that hierarchy, the accountability was my main focus was keep delivering 2 forks per year. I said, look, this is your goal, and it defined the role of Ethereum Foundation precisely in a sense that I didn't want people ever from Ethereum Foundation to say what you ship, but to act as a coordinator that makes sure that it delivers such a quality of testing, of security review, of research guidance and support that it allows everyone to ship regularly on schedule and everything that is needed. That's also Ethereum Foundation could help with with communication between all the parties that are building in the ecosystem, that we can take advantage of our abilities to coordinate. That we had amazing talent, and still Ethereum Foundation still has amazing talent to support it. And just by specifying that goal of shipping on time and often and what is needed, maybe in smaller chunks, you could almost structure everything else in the organization, because you had to communicate more and you had to create accountability, and you had to be focused. And these are the changes that we introduced. Before it was much more, well, maybe you would say decentralized. Many people would think, before it was decentralized and that hierarchy is a centralization force, which probably many people would reject and say that's just not what they would like to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, recent news, Ethereum Foundation said they're scaling back. And at the same time, we have ETH Labs, another nonprofit, saying that they're going to do a lot more R&D, try to advance maybe the mission that the Ethereum Foundation couldn't do. I mean, it sounds like great news. How do you view it? Do you have any insight?
Yeah, I was observing after leaving. I was observing the Ethereum Foundation communication, the management decisions, strategic decisions, and definitely there was a sharp turn after me leaving. As before I left, I was defining the budgets and goals and thought that 2026 has just delivered those goals. We managed to start talking about post-quantum security. We knew when we want to have forks. We didn't have to know what we would have in forks, but we knew the process of selecting it, how to help all the core developers to meet, to deliver on time. And I felt that the big aspect of what has to be talked about is AI and robotics as well. But robotics, I felt it would be too much to talk about robotics when you still talk about a lot of other things, and kind of you would drift away. So I think that could be done on the side. So after I left, there was like a change, right? Towards much more towards less enterprise, more privacy focus, and it's not necessarily bad. I don't think it was. Well, I think it's good actually for Ethereum Foundation. It does have to pick up those roles. I mean, I didn't like the form, the mandate, the idea of like having to sign it to stay, the milady aspect of it. It's like for me that was like not my vibe, and made me feel like someone tries to define Ethereum as to be like of particular shape or style, which is almost, I was like, totally opposite of what I'd like to see from Ethereum, where you accept all the different approaches and everyone would be just equally neutrally allowed to build. So that part I didn't like. But I totally accept and think it's reasonable, some kind of steering towards, like always, over and over again, maybe every year, towards things that matter from the perspective of the foundation goals and mission. So values, the crops, censorship resistance, open source, privacy, security. They have to keep investing in it and have to be sometimes a bit rough, I think, with people who take compromises. And then if foundation understands that it's one of many nodes, then it understands that it can kind of make its responsibilities much more narrow, much more focused. And you see recently ETH Labs was definitely that group of people that wanted to talk about adoption, about integration of Ethereum into finance, into whatever use cases you can imagine, probably AI as well. And they form ETH Labs, and those are some of the best leaders that I've seen in the Ethereum space. But it means because these are the leaders among the EF, and EF has fantastic talent. The people that stayed are fantastic. People that left and formed groups are fantastic, and it will be great to see that. And maybe it will be less conflict, probably. By conflict, I mean more like disagreements on the direction, which probably are healthy for sure, are healthy for Ethereum. Some people express like they worry about, or is it some kind of splitting the ideas, and maybe we would see some kind of disagreements on all core devs. It will be hard to decide who to follow. I don't expect it. I think that there'll be a good contribution from both sides. I'm not 100% sure. I think it'll be worth to observe it, how this, like maybe political allegiances, but hopefully not political, but more like technical. And but the developers love to argue, probably more than politicians.
Yeah, especially if they're opinionated. But yeah, like you said, I think it's a healthy debate. People have been pretty vocal, I think, lately, and they want to put more proposals out there to advance Ethereum. And like as you said, 2017, you probably thought you were late. Everybody coming in every wave feels like they're late. But yeah, like Nethermind, after a decade, you're partnering with UBS and exploring like the privacy tech on the Ethereum chain. I'm sure you thought it would happen like 8 years ago or something.
Yeah, that's amazing to observe. It just shows the quality of the current management and Nethermind. Like many of those people that drove it, they've been with us for many years. And after I moved to Foundation, Daniel Celeda took over as the CEO. And as obviously not only him, like all the management team that is like extremely talented and dedicated and loyal to the vision of what we're building. They led the company to many fantastic results with enterprise space. We knew that 2025, 2026 was that the time for talking to enterprise, that was important because everyone started adopting stable coins, the tokenization started getting traction, which means that the bank, and mostly because of regulatory, the thawing of the regulatory environment, the banks started reaching out actively and saying, okay, all of the innovation teams that we had that were quietly thinking about how in the future blockchain could be used, they started actively building them. And then Nethermind, definitely the team sees that opportunity and used all of the quality of engineering and research that we built in the team to work with the top teams around the world in finance. And we've seen like a few announcements like this, and the one from UBS and Nethermind together got a lot of attention. I think that attention is justified also because it addresses such a difficult problem. Like when we were at Ethereum Foundation, we were very actively promoting the enterprise privacy solutions, and it was consistently challenging. Like Etherealize, to my knowledge, works mostly on the topics related to enterprise privacy and asset classes tokenization as well, I think, but I don't know the details. Nethermind was working on this, but many other teams were trying to address this problem. How to, on one side, achieve the privacy for users, on the other side, understand that there are compliance requirements, and that if you just deliver this unconditional privacy, then you also start having trouble with the worst case scenarios of usable blockchain. So it's a difficult problem to see any progress on this, and we can now when the big companies actually choosing public chain. Those are a big feature of the last year. Say, go to the public chain. This is the time. There's no sense to experiment with private chains anymore. I think it was clear last year, and that was very, very rare to see private chains to be. Although some of those like examples of the alternative chains that came into life in the last few years also, some of them kind of reignite that approach to be private, but maybe what you see that marketing story usually is to be like a public chain and permissionless. But Ethereum definitely delivers that with a much more strict approach.
Yeah, it was 2017 when the Ethereum Enterprise was announced. So yeah, it's a long way. And like you said, there was like a lot of these kind of non-public blockchains like R3. But yeah, it's happy to see them come on chain because that's what everyone's proposed, kind of like the hardcore believers from the beginning, because you have more security and it's just better for everyone. Like, yeah.
Well, I think it's very interesting across all the things that we've talked about today. Ethereum, robotics, AI, everything is ultimately coordinating to the problems at different layers of reality that we have right now to our physical world. So like if we zoom all the way out for like maybe our final question today, like when you think about everything you worked on, finance, Ethereum, now robotics, like what's the thing that you are trying to build in the end?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's coordination layer and optimization of the coordination and removing latency from all the systems, in the end is a common element of everything that I work on. So when you look at the Nethermind story, it's the fastest time to synchronization was one call for us always, something that we would track. In the company at Nethermind, every day, the entire core engineering team would come and see in the morning what's the market share of the nodes, as how many nodes we have. And it doesn't mean that we would just maximize this. Actually, when you reach this 33%, then the team starts to actively try to help other teams. It happens in Ethereum, and it's great to see. But then the other story is continuous, always observation of the performance, the performance improvement, and how quickly you sync the chain. So they would keep running all those ephemeral infrastructure solutions that would tell you this is how quickly we synced mainnet in all the different modes. This is how quickly we sync all the different chains. And we would be obsessed with this to keep improving performance. And then practically doing the same on the infrastructure side, thinking of how quickly you can deploy a node, how quickly you can sync that node, and how quickly you can sync the latest block. It's all the latency questions. How quickly you get to the being able to actively participate in this decision-making for the block construction. And I think it connects with the idea of how quickly you can deploy to the physical space the data center for the node to operate with. And that optimization of the physical layer is just optimization in the end. You look at bottlenecks and you keep checking what is the one to look at the moment. And I think that defines what I'm working on now as well.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to keep following you and this robotics journey. Thank you so much, Tomasz. I know your time is really precious, so thank you for hopping on and sharing your vision for robotics and talking about Ethereum. I'm sure our viewers will love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassidy. Thank you, John. It was a pleasure.